Find some safe to play with, please. What? No. Find some safe to play with.
The internet just exploded. Lil Wayne dropped footage that nobody was supposed to see, and it's all about Birdman. What started as one of hip-hop's greatest mentor relationships has turned into something completely different. Wayne is warning that more is coming, and the entire music industry is watching to see what happens next. This isn't just another celebrity beef. This is decades of history, millions of dollars, and a father-son bond that's been tested in ways most people can't imagine. From the streets of New Orleans to the top of the Billboard charts, these two built an empire together. But somewhere along the way, things went terribly wrong. What really happened between Lil Wayne and Birdman? How did a 9-year-old kid from New Orleans become one of the greatest rappers alive?
Who Baby wasn't. He's a millionaire from the streets. And in New Orleans, you know, that name way before there was rap, before there was a Cash Money Records, that name held weight. You know, my mama went to school with him. My mama was so scared for me to even be involved with him. Wow. You know what I mean? All she would say was like, boy, that boy was 14 with $1 million. And she was scared of him.
And why did he turn on the man who gave him everything? The leaked footage is just the beginning. There are lawsuits, shootings, hospital visits, and reconciliations that make no sense until you understand the full story. This is the complete timeline of how hip-hop's most famous partnership became its most notorious feud. New Orleans in the early 90s was a different world. The streets had their own economy, their own rules, and their own way of making millionaires. Brian Williams, who the world would come to know as Birdman, understood this reality better than most. By age 14, he had accumulated $1 million. In that city at that time, that kind of money didn't come from legitimate business. It came from understanding the streets at a level that most adults never reached. The weight of that history mattered. When Birdman and his brother Slim founded Cash Money Records in 1991, they weren't just starting a record label. They were building an empire using the same principles that had made them successful in the streets. Control everything. Trust nobody. Keep the money close. These weren't just business strategies. They were survival instincts translated into the music industry. The label operated out of New Orleans, signing local talent and building a roster that reflected the city's unique sound. The business model was straightforward but ruthless. Sign artists young before they understood the industry.
I ain't never took from them. I always blessed them.
But why niggas keep saying that? No, you know what I'm saying? Why niggas keep saying that, bro? Like everybody, producer, all these folks be like, man, you don't pay, bro.
Wait, bro. I had some incidents early on.
Yeah.
Because I was really young and I ain't know no better.
Control their creative output completely. Retain ownership of everything they created. The approach generated criticism from day one, but it also generated results that nobody could argue with. In 1998, everything changed. Cash Money signed a distribution deal with Universal Music Group worth an estimated $30 million. This wasn't just a payday, it was validation. A regional label from New Orleans had forced one of the biggest music corporations in the world to recognize their value. But the structure of the deal revealed everything about how Birdman thought. Cash Money retained ownership of the masters, while Universal handled distribution. Birdman and Slim controlled the money. They decided who got paid, when they got paid, and how much. Into this environment walked Dwayne Michael Carter Jr., approximately 9 years old when he first met Birdman through another Cash Money artist. The details of that first meeting vary depending on who tells the story, but the outcome never changes. Birdman saw something in this child that made him decide to invest everything. And when Birdman invested, he didn't do anything halfway. He didn't just sign Wayne to a recording contract. He absorbed him completely. Wayne's biological father had abandoned the family when Wayne was barely old enough to remember him. That absence created a void, and Birdman filled it with calculated precision. He became father, mentor, manager, and boss all at once. The lines between these roles didn't just blur, they disappeared entirely. Wayne joined Cash Money as its youngest artist, placed in groups specifically designed to develop his skills. The Bee Gees came first, pairing him with another young artist to learn the basics of recording and performing. Then came the Hot Boys, expanding the roster to include Juvenile and Turk. These weren't just rap groups, they were training programs, allowing Wayne to develop technical skills and industry knowledge while still in middle school. The strategy worked beyond anyone's expectations. By the time Wayne was ready for a solo career, he had already logged thousands of hours in recording studios. His debut solo album dropped in 1999 when he was 17 years old. It sold over 1 million copies, validating every hour Birdman had invested and cementing their partnership as something special. But even during this period of success, questions circulated. Other artists on the Cash Money roster started complaining about money, royalty checks that never arrived, contracts that seemed designed to trap them, a business structure that made it nearly impossible to leave no matter how successful they became. Birdman addressed these concerns publicly, admitting that mistakes happened early on when he was young and didn't know better. He claimed every problem had been cleared up, every debt paid. The pattern of complaints suggested otherwise. The Hot Boys eventually disbanded, with members citing unpaid royalties. Juvenile left the label. Turk filed lawsuits. Other artists who had helped build Cash Money's reputation found themselves unable to benefit from that success. But through it all, Wayne stayed loyal. He defended Birdman publicly. He called him his father. He seemed genuinely devoted to the man who had raised him. The 2000s represented their peak. Wayne's album series redefined commercial hip-hop. His 2008 release sold over 1 million copies in its first week, the last hip-hop album to reach that milestone. The success attracted even more talent. Drake signed in 2009. Nicki Minaj followed. The label generated billions in revenue, and Birdman's reputation as a mogul seemed unshakable. Throughout this period, their father-son dynamic played out publicly. They released collaborative albums. They appeared together at every major event. And yes, they kissed on the lips in photographs that would later become evidence in debates about whether their relationship was appropriate. Birdman addressed the controversy directly, framing it as cultural rather than anything inappropriate. He explained that growing up in the streets, every goodbye might be the last time you saw someone. The kiss represented a father's love for a son he might never see again. The explanation resonated with some and rang completely hollow for others. The debate continues today, fueled by footage that keeps resurfacing and reframing old images through new accusations. Because beneath the public displays of affection and the commercial success, something else was building. Wayne was maturing, developing his own artistic vision, and starting to ask questions about money, specifically where all of it was going. The collapse happened suddenly, but the foundation had been cracking for years. By 2014, Lil Wayne had become one of the biggest stars in music history. He had delivered hit after hit for Cash Money. He had brought Drake and Nicki Minaj to the label, artists who were generating hundreds of millions in revenue. He had toured relentlessly, recorded constantly, and built Young Money Entertainment into a powerhouse subsidiary. And yet, when he looked at his bank accounts, the numbers didn't match the success. December 4th, 2014 marked the public breaking point. Wayne took to Twitter and said what he had been holding back for years. He accused Cash Money Records of holding him prisoner. He stated clearly that he wanted off the label and wanted nothing to do with these people. But the most damning part of his statement was the acknowledgement that it wasn't easy to leave. He called himself a prisoner, and he said his creativity was imprisoned with him. The tweet devastated Birdman because it was so specific. Wayne wasn't complaining about creative differences or artistic direction. He was claiming imprisonment. The man who had spent his entire adult life under Birdman's guidance, who had called him father for over 2 decades, was publicly stating that the relationship had become a cage. The album that was supposed to drop that month, his 5th in the series that had defined his career, was being held hostage. By January 2015, Wayne made it official. He filed a $51 million lawsuit against Birdman and Cash Money, alleging breach of contract for withholding his album and systematically mishandling finances. The lawsuit laid out years of alleged misconduct, unpaid advances, missing royalties, profits from his music that never reached his accounts. But the allegations went even further. Wayne claimed that Birdman was also stealing money generated by Drake and Nicki Minaj under a joint venture agreement where Wayne owned 49% of Young Money, while Birdman and Cash Money held 51%. The lawsuit wasn't just about recovering money. Wayne wanted to void his contract entirely. He wanted joint copyright over Young Money releases. He wanted an accounting of every dollar that had passed through Cash Money's hands for the previous decade. In a Rolling Stone interview that February, Wayne confirmed he and Birdman were not speaking. He described his completed album as being locked away like stash house money, finished, valuable, and completely inaccessible. The public battle escalated throughout 2015. Wayne released a mixtape in January that included direct attacks on Birdman, calling him names and declaring himself a one-man army against Cash Money. At concerts throughout the year, Wayne would stop performances to lead crowds in chanting obscenities about Cash Money. He altered lyrics to align himself with rival labels. The message was unmistakable. The father-son relationship was over, and Wayne was willing to burn every bridge to escape. Then the violence started. April 26, 2015, Atlanta. Wayne's tour bus was leaving a nightclub after a performance when multiple shots were fired from a white Chevrolet Camaro. Nobody was injured, but the message was clear. This dispute had moved beyond business disagreements and courtroom battles. Someone wanted Wayne to understand that continuing this fight had consequences. The indictment came in July. Jimmy Winfrey, an associate of Young Thug, was charged with 30 counts including aggravated assault and conspiracy. Prosecutors presented phone records showing Winfrey had contacted Young Thug multiple times before the shooting and had called Birdman immediately afterward. The implication was obvious. This wasn't random violence. This was connected to the Cash Money dispute, and the connections led directly to Birdman's circle. Birdman denied any involvement immediately. He called the allegations the craziest thing he had ever heard. He insisted Wayne was still his son, still family, and that he would never hurt him. No charges were ever filed against Birdman or Young Thug in connection with the shooting. Winfrey eventually took a plea deal and served time. But the incident transformed the dispute in everyone's minds. This wasn't just about money anymore. Someone had been willing to kill over it. The legal battles multiplied. Birdman countersued Jay-Z's streaming service for $50 million over an album Wayne had released, claiming exclusive rights to all of Wayne's music. Settlement talks broke down repeatedly, sometimes over seemingly petty incidents. In November 2016, negotiations collapsed completely after Wayne gave a shout-out to a rival label during a performance, prompting Birdman to walk away from the table. Wayne also sued Universal Music Group, Cash Money's distributor, for $40 million in royalties. He alleged that Universal had allowed Birdman to misuse funds that should have been paid to artists. Court rulings in September 2016 forced Birdman to produce financial records related to $51 million in advances. Cash Money had claimed the records were incomplete and couldn't be produced. The judge didn't accept that excuse. The ruling provided the first real glimpse into the label's financial operations and supported everything Wayne had been alleging about mismanagement. Meanwhile, the personal toll was visible. In interviews during this period, Wayne looked exhausted. He spoke carefully about the situation, clearly still processing the betrayal. Birdman had been more than a boss. He had been the only father figure Wayne had ever known. Turning on him meant confronting everything Wayne believed about loyalty, family, and the cost of success. Other artists who had left Cash Money reached out to Wayne, sharing their own stories of unpaid royalties and broken promises. The pattern was undeniable. But even during the worst of the conflict, moments of connection appeared. In January 2016, Wayne and Birdman were photographed together at a party. They hugged at a Miami club days later. These moments confused observers who were watching what seemed like an all-out war. How could they be suing each other for tens of millions of dollars while simultaneously embracing at parties? The answer revealed something important about their relationship. It couldn't be reduced to simple categories. The love was real. The betrayal was real. Both things existed simultaneously. The feud affected everyone around them. Drake and Nicki Minaj were caught in the middle, technically signed to Young Money, which was caught between Wayne and Cash Money. Other artists on the label watched carefully, seeing what happened when someone challenged Birdman's control. The message was clear to anyone paying attention. You could be the biggest star in the world, you could generate billions in revenue, and you still couldn't escape if Birdman didn't want to let you go. By 2017, the legal costs were mounting for everyone involved. Multiple lawsuits across multiple jurisdictions. Lawyers billing hundreds of dollars per hour to sort through decades of financial records. And through it all, an album that could have been generating millions in revenue sat locked in a vault because two men couldn't agree on who owned what. June 7, 2018. After years of legal warfare, public feuding, and a shooting that could have ended in tragedy, a settlement was finally reached. The terms were complex, but the core elements were clear. Wayne received a payment of well over $10 million. The money came from Universal, not directly from Birdman, a detail that revealed how the dispute had fractured relationships across the entire music industry infrastructure. More importantly, Wayne gained his release from Cash Money and full control of Young Money Entertainment. The album that had been held hostage for 4 years was finally cleared for release. It dropped in September 2018, immediately debuting at #1 on the Billboard charts. The success proved that the delay hadn't diminished public appetite for Wayne's music. If anything, the controversy had increased anticipation, but the chart position and sales numbers couldn't answer the real question everyone was asking. Could Wayne and Birdman actually reconcile after everything that had happened? Birdman made the first public move toward reconciliation at Wayne's festival in August 2018. He appeared on stage and delivered an apology. The crowd went wild as the two embraced and performed together for the first time in years. The moment was carefully choreographed for maximum emotional impact. Cameras captured every second. Fans cheered as if witnessing the reunion of family members separated by war. In many ways, that's exactly what it was. But reconciliation proved more complicated than a single moment on stage could resolve. Throughout 2019 and into 2020, their relationship existed in a strange liminal space. They weren't actively fighting, but they weren't truly together either. Wayne had his freedom and his label. Birdman still had Cash Money and his legacy. They occasionally appeared at the same events, spoke respectfully about each other in interviews. But the easy intimacy of their earlier years was gone. The business relationship that had defined both their careers for over 2 decades was finished. Whatever connection remained was personal rather than contractual, and even that personal connection showed visible strain. Wayne's absences from Cash Money events became a pattern that people noticed. When the Hot Boys announced a reunion tour in 2025, Wayne participated in some shows, but was notably absent from key moments. The Cash Money anniversary celebration that year, a massive event designed to commemorate 30 years of the label's existence, happened without Wayne in attendance. Other former Cash Money artists watched this dynamic carefully. They saw that even Wayne, the golden child who had generated more revenue than anyone else on the roster, had been forced to sue his way to freedom. The message was clear to anyone considering signing with Birdman. Success didn't guarantee fair treatment. Family bonds didn't prevent business betrayals, and leaving would cost you, one way or another. Birdman's approach to the anniversary celebrations revealed how he viewed the situation. He gave speeches about Cash Money's immortality, insisting the label would never die as long as he was alive. He acknowledged that soldiers had been lost along the way, but framed these departures as inevitable rather than preventable. When former artist Turk wasn't invited to participate, Birdman publicly disrespected him from the stage, making clear that old grievances were not forgotten or forgiven. The Turk situation exemplified a broader pattern. Artists who left Cash Money through lawsuits or disputes found themselves frozen out of reunion events and legacy celebrations. Birdman's message was consistent across all these situations. Loyalty was rewarded. Disloyalty, even when provoked by his own failures to honor financial commitments, was remembered and punished. The problem was that many artists felt their so-called disloyalty had been a justified response to being cheated. Then came the leaks. Throughout 2025 and into 2026, footage began circulating that Birdman had never intended for public viewing. Some of it was embarrassing. Some was potentially incriminating. The timing wasn't coincidental. As Birdman tried to celebrate Cash Money's legacy, former associates and rivals released material designed to undermine that narrative. The coordinated nature of these leaks suggested either organized opposition or simply that enough people had enough damaging material that it created a constant stream of releases. One particularly damaging incident involved footage of Birdman apparently falling asleep during a performance at the Hot Boys reunion. The clip went viral immediately, generating memes and genuine concern. Some interpreted it as evidence of declining health or energy. Others saw it as symbolic of Cash Money's fading relevance. A mogul literally sleeping through his own legacy event became a metaphor for an empire past its prime. The situation with another artist, who had been signed to Cash Money's distribution network, added fuel to the fire. This artist proved willing to weaponize content against Birdman, releasing footage and making claims about financial exploitation. Videos surfaced showing Birdman in unflattering situations, each one chipping away at the carefully constructed image of the untouchable mogul. The cumulative effect was devastating to Birdman's reputation, especially among younger audiences who hadn't witnessed his rise to power. But amid all this chaos, Wayne made an unexpected move. In October 2025, he visited Birdman in the hospital. The circumstances of Birdman's hospitalization weren't widely reported, but Wayne's visit generated significant attention. They reportedly spent time reminiscing about old times and even discussed the possibility of making new music together. The gesture confused observers who had watched their years-long legal battle. How could Wayne sue this man for $51 million, publicly call him a prisoner keeper, lead crowds in chanting obscenities about his label, and then show up at his hospital bed to talk about the good old days? The answer revealed something important about human relationships that doesn't fit neatly into social media narratives. Love and betrayal can coexist. You can genuinely care about someone who has genuinely harmed you. The father-son bond that Birdman and Wayne had built over decades couldn't be erased by lawsuits or even violence. It could be damaged, transformed, made complicated and painful, but it couldn't be entirely destroyed. By early 2026, their relationship existed in a state of permanent ambiguity. Birdman unexpectedly appeared at Wayne's New Year's Eve party, an event that was described variably as either a wild reunion or a tense encounter depending on which source you believed. Neither man clarified publicly what their current relationship actually was, leaving everyone to interpret secondhand accounts and grainy footage. Reports suggested Wayne had unreleased music that included shots directed at Birdman, indicating that whatever reconciliation had occurred was partial at best. The Super Bowl halftime show controversy created an unexpected moment of alignment. When the NFL chose another artist over Wayne for the 2025 Super Bowl in New Orleans, Wayne's hometown, Birdman joined others in publicly criticizing the decision. He positioned himself as an advocate for Wayne, despite their complicated history. The gesture was notable because it required nothing contractual and gained Birdman nothing financially. He simply believed Wayne deserved the honor and said so publicly. For a moment, the father was defending his son again, just like in the old days. But those moments of connection existed alongside continued tension. The leaked footage kept coming. The allegations kept circulating. Former artists kept sharing their stories of exploitation and unpaid royalties. So what do you think about this entire situation? The relationship between Lil Wayne and Birdman is one of the most complicated stories in hip-hop history. Was Birdman a visionary who gave Wayne opportunities he never would have had otherwise? Or was he an exploitative figure who took advantage of a child's talent and trust? The truth is probably somewhere in between, and that's what makes this story so fascinating. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Wayne and Birdman will ever truly reconcile? Should Wayne forgive him after everything that happened? And what about all the other artists who claim they were treated unfairly by Cash Money? Let us know what you think. If you found this deep dive into the Lil Wayne and Birdman saga interesting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We break down the biggest stories in hip-hop, giving you the full context and history that you won't find anywhere else. Turn on notifications so you never miss when we drop new content. We've got more incredible stories coming your way about the people and moments that shaped hip-hop culture. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.